Good evening. This is the recording for our class of June 6th, 2020 in the coronavirus year. And since June 6th is a national holiday in Korea, we are going to have a recorded lecture instead. We have officially 3 class hours to cover. I'm going to do that in 2 videos. They'll be about 60 minutes, 65 minutes in length each. It'll change a little bit maybe. And normally we would have discussions and things, and we will cover the discussions another time. This is pure lecture. And I'm sorry that it's going to be long, but I could make 5 little tiny short lectures, but it doesn't tie together well. We really have two big topics today. 2 topics. And that's what we're going to do. But first, a reminder about our schedule. There's only 14, there's officially 14 class meetings, but we didn't start until May 2nd. There's also a final exam report to make a total of 15 weeks. We don't have enough Saturdays because grades are due on July 17. So we have to do some makeups. That's why we're doing a recording this week. We have agreed in class last week to do a live class on Monday, June 15. And we're still going to need at least 1, 2, 3 more sessions. One of those could be a take-home test, but still we need at least 2 more real meetings. Just as a reminder, next week, June 13th, Saturday the 13th, will be a face-to-face meeting. June 15th will be a live Zoom. More information will come about that. And the 20th will be a face-to-face meeting. That's our plan. And we'll see how it goes after that. Okay. So, tonight we have 2 recordings. And loosely we could call it Lecture A and Lecture B. There was supposed to be a contemporary cultural policies overview. That is basically from the year 2000 to 2020. I'm going to have to save that for another time because we have already so much stuff. So let me just go ahead and make this italics and make this a red and maybe draw a line through it to say, not tonight. Whoops, not that one. Chiso. Oh, Chiso don't want to work. I don't know why. Okay. Anyway, not tonight. So, Culture Policy A is the first recording. Culture Policy B is the second recording. I do know that I'm going to lose some lighting here tonight. I have a fan blowing, and I have mini air conditioner, micro, tiny little air conditioner. It's basically a water cooler kind of thing. And sooner or later it will die. It's now 10:56 p.m. and Friday is a crazy busy day. So that's why I'm recording now. Last class, let's see, last class, we had a presentation. A couple of students did some presentations. One student took notes. That was for May 30th, but I don't see a May 30th notes up yet, so I hope those will go up soon. And we will review the May 30th class in our next class meeting, June 13. And I will also do a fast review of this recorded class on June 13th. So let's take a look at what I've put online for you. This is the same note as I had last week, but I made the indication here, I show you here, that the June 6th recorded lecture is 2 recordings and the topic is changed. We're doing culture policy theory, we could say. The one on contemporary got moved to June 13. Okay, that moved it down 1 week. All right, so we go back, and if we take a look at this recording, these are the notes for the recording that we're doing right now. And so I have 3 articles for you. Actually, not 3 articles. One is an actual article. It's a short journal paper. The second thing I have attached here is just an appendix to a book, and the book is listed below, but we're going to talk about this appendix while we're working today. And the third thing are some notes from a book. I compiled some notes from a book, and I'm going to ask you to read those. So, as it says, attached is an article I use a lot in this recording, the Cowan article. A table I use in the recording from Craik. Whoa, what's going to happen here? A table from the recording, and clips from an article, the Einarsson article. It's actually clips from a short book, and I want you to read that. So the links that are in the recording and the references in the recording, they're here. Some of them are books. One of them is a journal article that I don't think is available freely. I don't remember where I got it, probably at our university library. And there are a couple of books in here that are not available widely. Okay, so the Einarsson book is actually a short book. It's a Kindle book, and you can read part of it online if you want. The Taos book is a book. I borrowed it from the library or from a different library. I don't remember. And Schudson. Schudson is actually cited, but it's not actually a paper I've read. So I want to tell you that I have not read this paper, but it's cited in some work that I'm working from. So it's actually not a proper citation. In your journal, in your thesis, you can't just name a paper that somebody else named. You have to read it, or at least look at it, make sure that it says what you think. I'm cheating on this one a little bit, but I'm confident that the citation is mostly right, except that this is only the page that he quoted from. It's not the full quote. It's not the full length. Okay, so for a journal article, you would list all the pages, but here it only has the page that he copied from. All right, I don't need these links. I have them in my computer. Let's go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint and start tonight's lecture, the first lecture. Culture Policy Theory, Section 1. This is our broadest introduction to the idea of culture policy, where this Schudson guy says the modern nation state, okay, nation state is a country that is identified as an independent country with people who identify themselves as being part of that country. The United States is a nation state. South Korea is a nation state. Korea, North and South, is a nation, probably, but it's not a state. It's 2 states. Okay. There could be a country that is so badly divided the people don't feel like they are the same country, then that probably wouldn't be a nation state. It's probably a country that has had wars or is at war. And this week it feels like United States is at war with itself. The modern nation state, self-consciously, that means in my mind I choose to do it self-consciously, uses language policy, formal education, collective rituals, things that we do together, we always do together, like stand at attention for the flag, and mass media to integrate citizens, to pull citizens together, and to ensure their loyalty. Okay, so we want people to believe in the country, be loyal in the country. How can we do that? Well, we want to give them lots of information that makes them feel like I'm part of this country. I'm part of this country. And so rituals like in the United States, we stand up, we put our hand over our heart for the national anthem, the national song, right? That would be a ritual. Formal education, collective rituals, language policy. For example, in Korea, the official language is Korean. In the United States, the official language is English. Some people think the United States should also allow Spanish as a national language, just like Canada allows both French and English. But many other Americans say, no, English is what ties us together. From our beginning, in the 1700s, 1,700 years, right? That era, 1700, 년, 시대. I have a fly. Since that time, English has been our unifying language. People came from Poland and Germany and Italy and Spain and Japan and Korea and the Philippines and Mexico and so many other countries. And they come to America and they learn English, and English is what ties us together. And that is the language policy. English is the national language. That's not to say what I think. That is, in fact, the language policy. But in terms of law, the United States does not have a law that says English is the official language. The United States doesn't have that law. And if you want to vote, if you want to get a driver's license, there's many things you can use a different foreign language. The driver's test in California is available in 20 or 22 languages. The driver's test, the paper test, 20 or 22 languages. Korea is becoming more multilingual. You can take a driver's test in English or Chinese or Japanese and a few other languages, I think. So, yeah, language as a policy is maybe getting weaker. Schudson says the modern nation state, in their mind, they know it self-consciously. It's my thinking. I want this. Self-consciously uses language policy, formal education, collective rituals, and mass media. The newspapers, the movies, the TV, the radio. To integrate citizens and ensure their loyalty. Now that was written in 1994, and we can see that nowadays there are many social media that seem to be breaking society apart. Here's another way to think about arts. We talked about arts and culture before. At one point I said big C and little c. We talked about highbrow and lowbrow. Well, a few of the writers this week use phrases like big A and little a. And it means the same as highbrow, lowbrow. We could call it the elite arts, the opera and the things like that, and popular culture. For example, movies, especially trashy movies. you know, Rambo action, bang, 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 shoot 'em up movies. Or in this movie theater, we can see Rocky Horror Picture Show is here. And this is a very famous movie. It's a cult movie. A lot of young people go there. It's very famous to show at night, and people dress up in the style of the movie. And when the movie is playing, they are singing with the movie, they are talking with the movie. It becomes its own cultural event. It's certainly lowbrow. It's certainly along the lines of bowling or playing ping pong. Um, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of crazy. Rocky Horror Picture Show. Ah, I miss that. That's fun. All right. So big A and little a, big C and little c, highbrow and lowbrow, elite arts and popular culture. We have lots of ways to talk about these things. And tonight we're going to talk about all of them. So, in our overview of cultural policy, we're going to talk about the kinds of things that a cultural policy would cover, or cultural policies. So, cultural policy typically, usually, generally includes public support for things like heritage, our history, famous old buildings, battlegrounds where there was fights, uh, anything that is, let's say, 100 years old or older, and we think we should remember it, we should save it, preserve it, historic preservation sites. Okay. It can also include items, artifacts, uh, an old spoon from 300 years ago. Okay. But it involves public support for. That includes money, that includes rules or laws that regulate, that control what you can or cannot do. It can include the government setting aside some land and saying, no, we're not going to build on this. It's like a green belt, but it's a heritage belt or a heritage area. So, heritage, our history. Cultural policy includes zoos, parks, botanical gardens, flower gardens, arboretums. Daegu has an arboretum, right? A place where we keep lots of trees. Aquariums. Busan has an aquarium, right? Where you can go look at fish and dolphins and things like that. Maybe see a show. Culture policy usually involves libraries and museums. Yes, reading is culture, especially what people might think of as fine books. But anyway, reading is a kind of culture. Cultures in libraries and museums. These museums could be fine arts museums, scientific museums, historical museums. Cultural policy includes the visual arts, things we can see: film, painting, sculpture, pottery, and architecture. But what's the difference between film and movie? Usually, film is thought of as being educational or high arts, and a movie is thought of as being more popular, the pop culture. So we could talk about the big A and the little a. Performing arts: symphony, chamber music, choral music, jazz, hip hop, and folk music. Okay, hip hop and folk music seems like a strange match, but it means kind of that long extension of common people's music from the most contemporary to the oldest. Ballet, ballroom, and modern dance. Ballroom dance is a little bit different from ballet, right? And modern dance. Opera and musical theater. Circus performances, when the circus comes to town. Do we have a circus in Korea? I don't think I've heard about it. In US, most cities, a small circus or a larger circus will come. There used to be 2 or 3 large circus companies in America that came around from time to time, but I think they're mostly gone. Mostly gone. There is a smaller circus that still comes to my parents' town, as I recall. Rodeos, right? Ride the horse and the horse is trying to throw you off. And marching bands. Many cities have a city band. Might be a concert band, might be a symphony, might be a marching band to march down the street. Might have many kinds of bands. They're all different. Finally, in this summary, public support is included in a cultural policy for public humanities. Okay, we talk about arts and humanities. And the humanities are a little bit hard to define, but it means things that aren't quite art, but somehow improve our condition, make us better people. For example, reading poetry at the library. And we tell everybody, Wednesday at 4 p.m., there will be a poetry reading time. You're welcome to come. Somebody has to pay that poet to come read, right? Maybe he's going to sell books, but maybe he's not. So we need a budget for somebody to come and read poetry. It could be his own poetry. It could be somebody who's a famous speaker from the opera who is coming to read, how do you say it? Shijo? Korean traditional poetry? It includes things like public broadcasting, right? EBS is very educational in Korea, but in US, PBS is a little bit less educational. They have that, but they also will broadcast symphonies, they will broadcast operas, and anybody who has a TV can watch it, right? Somebody has to pay for that. It's government TV station, kind of like KBS, and NBC has government money. The main TV networks in US do not get government money, but public broadcasting gets almost all their budget from the government. Okay? And that listing of cultural policies came from the Wikipedia page, Cultural Policy. And I retrieved this data on April 8th. Now, if you know about Wikipedia, you know that almost anybody can update it, change it. Sometimes there's arguments. And so one person changed it, another person changed it this way, then another person changed it this way, another person changed it this way. So it's important if you cite Wikipedia that you put the date on it. All right? Wikipedia. Now let's just go back and take a look, and you can see that Schudston is listed, and the Wikipedia article is listed. And if you click on that Wikipedia article, you'll see the way it looks today. Wikipedia. All right. Overview of cultural policy. Cultural policy generally, usually involves public support, whether it's financial or legal, for these kinds of things. That's not a complete and perfect list. That's a good summary. All right. So when we talk about cultural promotion, this was a very interesting article I read, this Cowan article, because Tyler Cowan is a world-renowned writer on culture and economics. And he said that one day he was sitting down and his 15-year-old daughter started talking to him about cultural economics, cultural promotion. And this world-famous professor thought, my daughter knows more than I do, because the world is changing so fast. The world is changing so fast. So, because of his conversation with his daughter, he did some research, and he decided the most important cultural institution in the USA is not the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, which is very famous for giving money to artists, whether it is a painter or a theater group, a dance group, a singing opera group. It's not the NEA, which everybody thinks about when they think about arts, right? Because actually the NEA has a very small budget. He says it's roughly the same budget at the NEA as the marketing budget for a blockbuster Hollywood movie, right? Star Wars. The budget for Star Wars is as much as the US government gives for a whole year to our artist. So the most important cultural institution is not the NEA. It's not the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, which is maybe America's most famous museum. And it's not the New York Times. And actually, that should be italics. Control I. Probably the most important cultural institution in America is Facebook. Facebook. Now, it's understandable that this famous professor, when he wrote his books in 1999 and years before, he didn't think about Facebook because it hardly existed and it wasn't very popular and people just didn't write that much on it. But nowadays, people write everything on Facebook and they make comments about what's good and what's bad in arts. And here we're thinking about culture promotion. How can I let people know about my new show? Facebook is one of the big ways. So when we're talking about cultural promotion, we have to think about all kinds of possibilities, and those possibilities will change over time. Now, in 3 years or 5 years, Facebook might not be the answer. The world might change in many ways. But this is just a way to help you think about thinking things differently. Don't only think about what you know. Don't only think about what you studied. Keep your eyes open and your ears open to find new solutions. Now, by the way, I'm wearing a headset today because I have 2 fans blowing and they're noisy. And if I use the mic in the camcorder, then you would get a lot of noise. And you don't want that. So I'm using the mic. Now I'm going to try and turn this camera down just a little bit because I like to use my hands. Okay. Cultural promotion. So when we think about cultural policy, okay, we introduced cultural policy, then we popped over to promotion for a moment just to help you think widely. Now we're going to come back and talk in detail about cultural policy. And Craik offers 5 models of cultural policy. In her paper that I quote below, she talks mainly about 4. The first 4 are her preferred. But then she also mentions a model that she wrote about in a book some years before. And she just kind of mentioned it, but it's useful for us because it fits Korea's history. So the four main models she discussed were the patron model. And we talked about patron last class. Patron means father, right? And the architect model. You know, architects, they design buildings, they plan everything exactly how it's supposed to work. The engineer model. Okay, an engineer is a little bit less of a designer and more of a, it should work exactly this way. A facilitator is somebody who helps you to do. They don't make their own way, they help you to make your way. And then the 5th one is the elite nurturer. Now, nurture means the way a mother takes care of a child, whether it is a bird or a human. They feed them, they teach them, they protect them, They help them to grow into the ideal case. Help them to grow to be what we hope them to be. So, the example countries for these are the patron model would be the United Kingdom and Australia. The architect model would be France and Scandinavia. Scandinavia means Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, those types of countries. Engineer model, probably North Korea. The facilitator model, United States for sure. Everybody talks about it that way. And the elite nurturer model, I'm going to suggest a good model would be Bak Jung-hee. Now, let's just move this just a little bit so that you can see better. There's the site. It's in the 학습 자료 in the page. And if you download this PowerPoint, which I will make available after we record, you could also click on it there. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 main models, a fifth model. Let's go through these one by one. The patron model. This is the United Kingdom, and Australia is best known for this. It's called an arm's length model. Arm's length means you can't get closer than my arm. I'm trying to get this in the camera so you can. Okay, and nowadays we're doing social distancing and we say 2 meters, right? My arm to your arm. If my fingers are touching your fingers, we're too close. So arm's length means that the government should not be able to control. The government should not be able to grab in their hand. It should be just too far away to be able to control. So an arm's length direct support. That means probably not direct government budget, but the government gives a budget to an arts agency, and then the arts agency gives the money to groups. So it's an arm's length, but direct support. We're giving you money. And the support goes to artistic and cultural forms. Okay, forms. It doesn't mean organizations. It means types of arts that are favored, that are preferred, I like, by the regime, that means the government, and the taste makers. Okay, the people who think that that's the right thing to do. That is the good culture. All right. So the people who are in power and the people who influence arts have much ability to control where money goes into which field. So are sculptors who make statues out of clay, are they getting money this year? Or is money going to painters? Or is money going to dancers? This kind of wider decision, and then that's where the government gives the money to the agency, and then the agency gives the money to the individual performers, the artist, the dancer, the singer. Okay, so the government doesn't control directly. Arm's length. Patron means I am the father to many children, and I support my children, but maybe I support some more than others. Okay, but the government's job is to take care, but at arm's length. The second model is the architect model. Remember, we said an architect is somebody who designs beautiful buildings. Okay, it has to be functional, it has to work, but it should be pretty. This label goes to the idea that culture is the responsibility of a ministry. We have a ministry of art. We have a ministry of culture. We have a ministry of humanities. And their job is to guide. So in the patron model, the government gave money to an agency that was arm's length. Okay, the minister of art couldn't control that arts agency. But in the architect model, the minister of arts can control how that money goes out. So it says, in this model, it is more interventionist. Government can interfere more. Government can get more involved in how the decisions are made. Okay? And in this case, the goals, the aims of arts and culture policy should match, should align, be in the same track with the social welfare and national culture objectives of the government. So, for example, in Korea, Korean government wants to support traditional Korean arts. That's what they're going to give it to. But if they say, let's have a 2021 year of global culture in Korea, then we're going to support things like the Gyeongju World Culture that brings in artists from all around the world. Okay? So the government makes the decision through the ministry what kinds of things we want to fund. These things should match the government policy. Okay? Government funds these activities. And the reason that we like it is because our creators, our painters, our sculptors making things, the dancers, the singers, the orchestras, they don't have to live only from what they can sell. Okay, the box office financing. If nobody buys tickets to the show will die. Well, no, the government is going to give enough money so that the show can survive. That's the idea of the architect model. We will protect you. Okay? You won't die from the economy, from people not buying tickets. The box office, where the tickets are sold. The next model is the engineer model. And it seems like North Korea follows this model. Culture is prioritized. Culture is important because it is part of political education. All right? So North Korea has an official policy, ideology, approach that says that Korea is not dependent on anyone. Korea is first. Korea is foremost. Do you know this policy? This is the same policy that said we don't need to use Hanja, get rid of it. We don't need to use Hanja type words. We're going to use pure Korean words, right? So don't need to say su because mul covers all the bases. Okay? So thinking of culture widely, whatever it is, dance, opera, whatever, culture is an object of political education. So that means government owns the artistic means of production. The government owns the theater. It's not an independent theater. The government owns the opera house, the symphony. The government owns it, and the creators, the musicians, the painters, whatever, they're employees. They're workers. They don't have their independence. They don't have their freedom. They do what the government tells them. Culture produced here is overtly political. Overtly means obviously, definitely, clearly political. And that culture must be consistent with national priorities. So if the government wants something, that's what they pay for. If the government doesn't want something, they don't pay for it, you don't have a job. Okay. Engineer model, North Korea. Facilitator model is known for the United States. It's considered a hands-off approach. Now remember we said the UK and Australia have this arm's length, I gotta get my picture hand, that it has to be beyond the reach. Well, the US model, the hands-off model is we don't even try to reach. We keep our hands in our pockets. All we want to do is to create conditions that encourage cultural production, that favor cultural production. And we don't want to choose this culture or that culture. We think diversity is good. We want lots of different kinds of culture, lots of different activities. And how do we do that? We encourage that diversity by indirect support through other people. The government doesn't need to give a lot of money. That's why the NEA is relatively small. Because we want citizens to give money to the types of culture they like. And the citizens basically subsidize. Now, there's two ways that they can subsidize. One is they can buy tickets. Okay, that's the box office model. But the other is citizens can make donations to the arts. Why would they do that? Well, because they love it? Well, maybe. Well, because they get their name on a plaque? Well, maybe. Well, because the government gives tax deductions. The government wants citizens to support the arts, both by attending and by donating. Okay, so the model is a hands-off model where government doesn't interfere. They don't even set up a big cultural agency where the ministry says, here's the cultural agency, here's the money, please fund painting. And then that agency funds painting. No, the hands-off is the government doesn't do anything about it, minimally, not a lot of money, but instead encourages other actors to do, and that's the indirect support. Okay? And so because the government is encouraging people to do this through a tax deduction, the government is basically, effectively subsidizing cultural activities indirectly. Okay? The idea is that, for example, the symphony gets 65% of their income by selling tickets, or 55% of their income from selling tickets, something like that. And the other 45 or 55% of their income is from donations. Well, maybe 5% comes from the national government, and 3% comes from the state government, and 6% comes from the city government, and that makes, help me out, 11, 14% of their budget is government money, 14%. And 55 or 60% is tickets. That puts them at, about 70%? That means 30% of their budget every year comes from donations. And people give money because they want to. They get their name on the plate, on the little brass plate that goes up on the wall, and because they get a tax discount. All right. By the way, we don't really need this here, do we? Let's just move it. Okay, the fifth model, the elite nurturer model. Elite means the chosen few, the 2% at the top. And nurture, as I said, is like a mother caring for a baby until it can grow up to be everything it wants to be. So here we say government chooses just a few preferred groups. Okay, remember with the patron model, the government chose an area and created an arm's length organization that we can't interfere with. And the arm's length organization will do the funding. Here, the government says, I choose this group. I choose that group. I choose you, and I choose you. And you get a budget from the government directly. No interference, nobody in the middle. And we promise we'll keep funding you. Now, that could be a government-created group, or it could be an independent group that is loved by government. And because they're basically guaranteed a budget for years and years unless they really do something bad, there's no competition. They have no reason to take chances. They have no reason to do anything that might make somebody unhappy, so they don't really experiment much. Government doesn't experiment much, and the organizations that are funded don't experiment much. So we get much conservatism in cultural development. This is the fifth model from Craik from her earlier book. And you can see I've chosen a picture of Park Chung-hee in his very much I'm the decider kind of picture. Do that, right? Now, I'm not picking on Park Chung-hee. It's just a good example. Right? A different model, a different way of looking at things is what's called the cultural exception model. Exception means accept me. It's different. We have to do things differently. And in this case, let's see if I can make this a bit bigger. In this case, it's basically because people in a smaller country, a less famous country, are reacting against globalization of culture. Okay? They are reacting against global cultural dominance. It is in Korea where we say we don't want to lose our Korean culture. We don't want to lose our Korean language. We don't want to lose our Korean traditional foods. Okay? America controls too much. Or if you're in Africa, you'll find there are a lot of countries that feel like France is too controlling. The French people aren't doing it. It's the French culture that people are using the French culture more than the homeland culture. We can call this cultural colonialism. And I have a colleague from Pakistan who's very active on this topic right now. He's very concerned that, especially English, is causing local languages to go away, local cultures to go away. And so they want to make rules to protect the local culture from those colonial languages and colonial cultures. Protect the culture. And in Korea, as we talked about at one point, Korea has a screen quota system, right? That a certain number of movies or movie showings have to be done every year. And I don't remember, is it 30% now? Right? But they want to make sure that the local cinema movies, that industry doesn't die. We have to have places for them to show, and then we hope that citizens will go watch them. Theaters have to save some showtimes for local movies. And the same can be true in various other events. This could be quotas, this could be budget, that we don't give budget for productions that are made in English, something, okay? Cultural exception. If we think about this in economics, and this is where I'm going, especially in the second hour, okay? Economics. People think of culture only in culture. Culture by itself will fail. Governments won't fund it. We have to see some economic good also. In economic terms, culture is not a classic good. Okay? Now we can talk about goods and services and classic goods and contemporary goods. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today. I'll be teaching economics next semester in the MBA program, the GMBA program. But basically what we want to say is that culture is socially rooted. Culture is not something that you buy and sell. Culture is a good from the people, in the people. It's a public good, and it's a permanent good. That is, you can't consume it. You can't use it up. It is there until it is forgotten. But it can't be eaten. It's not like corn, rice, oil. You can't use it up. In fact, in some ways, the more you use it, the more it is, right? The more you do cultural shows, the more people see it, the more people learn it. So it's not the kind of good that gets consumed, gets used up. Because it's not a classic good, free trade doesn't work. Free trade policies are not the right idea. We have to protect it. We need the protection. We need the exception. So we have the quotas in foreign media. A language, source means where it's from. Okay. And here's another way to look at culture policies. This is what I will call an EU perspective, a European Union perspective. And this is from a reading. You can see at the bottom, Cultural Policies in the EU. Again, it's on the page. And we're going to look at two main perspectives here. The French approach says the state, the government, even if it is the local government, takes priority. The decisions of the government are the most important. This idea says art and culture support national identity. Art is nation. Culture is nation. Koreans would not be Koreans if we lost folk music, okay, farmers' music. If we lost throat. Throat's definitely influenced by Western music, but it's become Korean. And if we lost it, we would lose a part of Korea. So we need to support it. Okay? Art and culture support national identity. Art and culture support cultural specificities. What makes a Korean different than a Japanese? Well, part of it would include things like Korean dance, Korean music, Korean pottery. Art and culture support cultural democratization. Now that's an interesting idea. Democratization, that everybody is equal, that everybody has the same share, the same vote. I have to admit, I'm not sure I understand that one. I'm not sure I agree with it. But certainly, art and culture support national identity and cultural specifics, the specifics of my culture. That is to say, culture is part of the public sphere, not the private sector, not the private sphere, but the public sphere, where everybody can access it. Okay? Culture is part of us, is part of the public, and it should be available, accessible to everyone as a public service. Contrast the French approach, where the state makes decisions and culture is part of the public sphere, with the British approach. The British approach says government involvement should be limited. Not the government makes lots of decisions, but the government makes few decisions. And those decisions are based on a little bit of money. Because the policies are based on arm's length support. We decide something is good, and we give another organization to do it. So here it says the organisms, which is weird writing. I would say the organizations, but I stole this from this article, right? The organisms, the organizations that support the art must be autonomous, not controlled by the government, and not engage politically, okay? These organizations should not be involved in politics. They get the money. Under the rules, they share the money. This is to say that art and culture are part of a private, individual sphere. Each person makes their own choices about what is good culture, what is not. That organizations are private. That if the Yeongnam dance troupe decides that they want to do certain kind of dance, that's their choice, and the government should not be making part of that decision. My ear's itching. Finally, the EU perspective offers a third choice, which is a hybrid, a merging. Somewhere in the middle, it's got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. A hybrid, a merger, something new. You know about hybrid cars, right? Hybrid car uses both gasoline or LPG and solar or electric. Somehow they use two or more kinds of power. So hybrid, something that mixes two different, the British and the French. Okay, a little more on the French cultural policy before we take our break. French cultural policy. Here's a case study that I borrowed. And André Malraux, who was the Minister of Culture in the French Fifth Republic, 1959, with Charles de Gaulle, identified three pillars, three main supports for cultural policy. Heritage, which they identified as eternal products of the imagination. The things of our history that we want to never let die because they inspire us. Our great history guides our future. The second is creation, creating new works. Money should do that. And the third is democratization, where cultural policy should help correct, redress, repair, fix socioeconomic inequalities. Okay? Where people are not equal on social and economic reasons. For example, France has many blacks. France has many people from North Africa. Here are two ethnic groups that are disadvantaged in France. So we have a chance to put a little bit more economics, a little bit more art money in these groups. We're going to help raise them up. Okay? It could be because certain artists are poor. We're trying to deal with disadvantage. Certain communities are more poor. People are poor. We want them to go see the art, so maybe we'll make free tickets for people who are low income. Special shows on Sunday afternoon for children. I have been to these when I was young, special afternoon programs for children. They were for the common kids, not for the rich, because symphony is expensive. I couldn't go to that. But middle class and lower class families maybe could get tickets to go to these special shows. So democratization, making everybody equal in the arts. Continuing with the culture policy case study, the minister offered two ideas where people disagree. Point of contest like a fight, a match, boxing contest. Action culturelle and l'action socio-culturelle. And basically, if you speak better French than me, because I've forgotten it, you might say culturelle. It means bringing culture to the people. Type 1. Or the opposite is culture comes from the people. So if we are looking at the high arts, let's say opera, and we want to bring opera to the common people, maybe we have the Sunday afternoon shows for children, school children from middle class and lower class families. We're trying to bring opera to the people. On the other hand, if we say culture is from the people, is with the people, is in the people, then we might say, let's have money for street dance. Let's have money for hip-hop contest. So, these two ideas, they conflict. There's a point of contest. And that's okay. They don't have to be all one or the other. There's not a right or a wrong. This is where the policies have to wrestle to find which thing we do this year. And if we're talking about bringing culture to the people, who decides what is the right culture? What is the great works? This article uses the word the canon. The canon means the book of perfection. Okay, the ultimate list. And this case study came from a lecture notes series. Basically, a professor did his lecture notes just like I'm doing here, and he put it up on SlideShare, which is a web-based PowerPoint slides kind of share thing, and I got it from there. So this case study came from the flu article, the flu slides, and you can look at them too. So when we're talking about making arts and culture policies, we have reasons. We have very philosophical and theoretical reasons, like I've discussed before. We can analyze them that way. But very often, on a more basic level, we can look at some what we might call simple reasons. And they're listed here. Boosterism means to just say, yeah, we're good, let's do this. And it could be to boost the national morale, the national psyche, make people feel good about their culture. And it could be to boost a particular art form that we think is important or is dying and we want to help protect it. Okay? A rationale could be citizenship, to make people understand their culture, their culture and their country, and be proud of their country. Okay? To make people feel American, make people feel Korean. We're going to do art that supports that sense of national identity. Instrumentalism basically means something like there are economic reasons or social reasons that make this cultural activity a benefit to the society. And very often, instrumentalism means there are economic reasons. For example, if we have a comic convention, and San Diego has one, it's called Comic Con. It's a big show. People come from all over the world to dress up in their favorite comic character. I'm Superman, right? And to see lots of activities and to see lots of displays. The city gives some money for this convention, but many, many people come to the city and they have to sleep in hotels and they have to eat in restaurants. And so these people come into the city and spend their money. And there is much more economic good that comes out of this convention than the city spent to support it. So that's a kind of instrumentalism, that this cultural activity will provide a benefit. Maybe not direct, okay? You stay in a hotel. The hotel collects a tax. The tax goes back to the city. We can hope that the money from the hotels that people slept in, and otherwise the hotel room would be empty, that the money from those hotel rooms will pay back the city's investment in the convention. The same thing is with restaurant tax. Plus, the people working in the hotels, people working in the restaurants, now they're working, not sitting at home. They're getting more tips. They're paying more taxes. And because they're working, they have money to go buy something else. Now they can take their kid to see a movie, and there's movie taxes paid. So this idea of a cycle, that a cultural event creates more activity. You go to the symphony at night, downtown, you're probably going to have dinner before downtown in a nice restaurant. And that makes more money. That's instrumentalism. Cultural capital. Capital is an economic idea. It means that there is a basic value that we can convert into another value. So a cultural capital says we are improving society's knowledge of and ability to use our culture. Now, can we really convert cultural capital into money? I'm not quite sure, but it's related to the next one, which is branding and recognition. Basically, you can't brand it if it doesn't exist, so we need cultural capital to do branding. So many people would say that Made in Korea was not very famous, was not very well known until we found the Hallyu. The way, Korea became famous for something else, and then suddenly Samsung air conditioners and LG air conditioners started selling much better in Southeast Asia. Okay, because Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, they fell in love with Winter Sonata and K-pop, and so suddenly Korean stuff became good. So the cultural capital leads to branding and recognition, and that is part of our creative industry. So in order to create more cultural capital, maybe we need creative industries. Maybe all of that is tied to innovation. I think the sort order here is a little strange. Innovation, creativity, creative industries. So these are all reasons we could give to create a cultural policy. Okay, that is the end of our first recording. We're right at 65, 66 minutes, a little over an hour. And we'll come back in about 5 minutes and do the second one. Of course, you can watch the videos at different times. And you can always watch the video again. Thank you very much. Let's stop.